Listen. Practice. Speak. Practice makes you perfect.
Business English learning conversations they've been having. And wow, there's some serious strategic gold in these dialogues. I mean, we're talking way beyond just grammar, right? These conversations cover everything.
Yeah.
Like the inner workings of project management, figuring out how to break into new markets,
Right.
sustainability,
Of course, a huge topic these days.
and even those nail-biting client negotiations we all face.
I've been in a few of those.
Haven't we all?
Yeah.
These conversations touch on it all. We've got revenue forecasting, the digital tools we rely on, the whole leadership landscape,
Absolutely.
planning for the unexpected with crisis management,
Essential.
the spark of product innovation,
Always exciting.
how to keep supply chains running smoothly.
A real challenge in recent times.
Then there's the people side. HR policies,
Uh-huh.
resolving conflicts, forging strategic alliances,
Right.
protecting your brand's reputation,
Couldn't agree more. That's gold.
and equipping teams with the skills they'll need for the future. Upskilling. Our mission today is to dive deep into these conversations,
Sounds like a plan.
really unpack the key strategies, the actionable insights that separate good businesses from great ones. So, with this massive range of topics,
Yeah.
where do you think that core foundation lies?
You know, what strikes me is how interconnected all these areas really are. But if we're talking about the real foundation,
Yeah.
I'd say project management. It often sets the stage for success or failure, honestly, and not just in one area, but across the board.
That makes a lot of sense. And I see that reflected in these conversations.
Yeah.
Over and over.
So,
This need for a really cohesive approach to get projects moving and to speed things up.
right. Expedite project timelines. That's the phrase that keeps popping up.
But it's not just about being fast, is it?
Not at all. It's about momentum.
Ah.
Showing value early. It builds confidence with stakeholders. One thing I've noticed, a lot of these conversations talk about integrating agile methodologies.
Okay.
And a big part of agile is that iterative development, working in short bursts,
Yeah.
getting feedback along the way. You can course correct as you go.
So instead of just barreling down a path, you're checking the map constantly.
Exactly. Like having a GPS that updates in real time, so much better than relying on some old, outdated map.
And it keeps everyone in the loop. Stakeholders know the project's on track.
Absolutely. They see progress. They can adapt their expectations if needed. It avoids those nasty surprises down the line.
And speaking of avoiding surprises, these conversations really emphasize breaking down those internal walls, yeah. This idea of harnessing cross-department collaboration.
It's not just nice to have.
Right.
It's vital. Spotting problems early, boosting transparency for everyone.
So what are some practical ways to make that kind of collaboration happen?
Well, one key suggestion that keeps coming up,
Yeah.
a concise framework for team coordination. Doesn't have to be this rigid hierarchy,
Right.
but clear roles. Clear responsibilities,
Okay.
clear communication channels. Think of it like an orchestra.
Oh,
Everyone knows their part, when to come in. They have a conductor.
got it.
In a business, you have regular meetings across departments, shared workspaces, and clear ways to escalate issues if they come up.
So that information can flow freely.
Exactly. Roadblocks get spotted and dealt with before they become huge problems.
Now, even with a fantastic plan, you need the resources to pull it off.
Absolutely. Resources and budget. Those are two words that come up constantly.
Right. And these conversations really highlight the importance of making sure you've got enough resources allocated.
Yeah.
And this idea of revisiting the budget regularly to avoid any shortfalls.
Revise the budget allocation periodically. That's the key phrase.
How often should you really be taking a look at that budget?
It depends, of course, on
Yeah.
the length of the project, how complex it is. But generally, I'd say at least a monthly review.
Okay.
So you can make adjustments in time. It's not just about reacting to problems.
Right.
It's about being proactive. You know, asking yourself, are there phases coming up that'll need more resources than we initially planned? Are there areas where we can free up some funds because things are going faster than expected? This way, you make sure your resources are used effectively.
Don't run out of steam halfway through.
Exactly. Or, more importantly, run out of money.
And that proactive thinking extends to external partners too, doesn't it?
Absolutely.
A lot of emphasis on maintaining those contractual obligations, clear, consistent communication.
It's all about managing expectations,
Right.
building trust from the start.
So what are some best practices? How do you keep those relationships strong? Avoid misunderstandings.
Well, one suggestion that comes up is circulating a really detailed briefing memo
Okay.
right at the beginning.
So everyone's on the same page.
Exactly. Laying out the key milestones, the dependencies, then regular updates. Transparent reporting on your progress.
Okay.
And any challenges. You've got to be proactive, engaging with your partners.
Addressing their concerns, making sure everyone feels heard.
Exactly. When everyone's informed and involved, you avoid those nasty surprises.
And to make sure everyone's on the same page internally, the conversations highlight these formal check-ins. Weekly virtual meetings in a world drowning in email.
Right.
Why are those face-to-face or screen-to-screen interactions so important?
Well, emails are great for sharing information, but these regular check-ins, especially with video, they create a space for real dialogue, clarification, building rapport. It's where you can pick up on those nonverbal cues, address issues in real time, foster that sense of shared purpose.
And accountability. One speaker put it this way: constant communication fosters trust.
Spot on. And these meetings provide that human connection. Helps to prevent those little misunderstandings from snowballing into big problems.
And in our digital age, it's no surprise these conversations emphasize technology to keep projects organized.
Makes sense.
Specifically, a streamlined workflow platform.
To get rid of those endless email chains, get status updates instantly.
What should you look for in a platform like that?
Well, first, real-time visibility.
Okay.
You want to see how tasks are progressing, seamless file sharing and collaboration.
Okay.
And automated notifications. So you know about deadlines, dependencies, and integration with other tools your team uses.
Like calendars.
Yeah.
Communication platforms. Everything in one central hub.
Exactly. No more hunting through endless email threads. Everyone's got a clear picture.
And speaking of clear pictures, this idea of an integrated dashboard comes up. Centralizing data for faster decisions.
What kind of data should be on a dashboard like that?
So the key is showing those metrics that give you a high-level view of how the project's doing. Things like progress against those key milestones.
Okay.
Budget burn rate. How are your resources allocated?
Right.
What are the risks and how are you managing them?
Makes sense.
Any specific key performance indicators or KPIs that are relevant to the project's goals.
And this dashboard should be customizable.
Oh, interesting. How so?
So different stakeholders can see what's most relevant to them.
I see.
Helps them spot issues quickly and make decisions based on real data.
Now, with all this digital information flying around, security obviously becomes a huge concern.
Huge, yes. Yeah. Can't ignore that.
And these conversations are all over it, really hammering home the need to evaluate and strengthen those security protocols, things like encryption, access controls. What are some fundamental security measures every project should have?
Well, at the very least, if you're dealing with sensitive information, you need strong encryption.
Okay.
Both when the data is being transmitted and when it's stored.
Got it.
Then access controls. Limiting who can see and edit what.
So you don't have everyone poking around where they shouldn't be.
Precisely. And regular security audits.
To find any weaknesses.
Exactly. Find those vulnerabilities before someone else does.
Makes sense.
Then you need training for employees.
So everyone understands best practices, knows what to do if there's an incident.
Exactly. Think of it like locking your doors and having a security system.
Layers of protection.
Protecting your valuable assets.
So you've got your plan, your resources, your security in place. Now, these conversations talk about finalizing those timelines, making sure you have enough time for testing before you launch anything.
Crucial step. You don't want to rush that.
What are some common pitfalls to avoid during that testing phase?
Well, one big one is insufficient testing.
Okay.
Not testing all the features, not thinking of all the different ways people might use the product.
Right, different scenarios.
Exactly. Another one is rushing.
Because you're under pressure to meet deadlines.
Precisely. And that leads to releasing buggy products.
Or features that don't quite work as intended.
Yeah. It's also important to get stakeholders involved in testing.
So they can see if the final product meets their expectations.
Exactly. And make sure you document everything.
Your test cases, the results.
It helps you identify and fix issues. Think of testing as your final quality check.
Better to find problems now than to have your customers find them later.
Couldn't agree more.
And even with the best planning, things don't always go perfectly.
Of course.
These conversations emphasize the importance of getting stakeholders to review those updated schedules. Really valuing their input on potential obstacles.
Especially when it comes to resource conflicts.
Right. Overlapping priorities. How do you effectively get that feedback and make sure you're actually using it?
Proactive engagement is key. Don't just hand them an updated schedule.
Right.
Create a space for discussion, have dedicated meetings, use online platforms where they can comment, raise concerns. Explain the rationale behind any changes you've made.
Right.
And show them how their feedback has been incorporated.
So they feel heard.
Exactly. It's a collaborative approach.
Everyone's working together to create a realistic plan.
A plan that everyone feels invested in.
Now, when it comes to those inevitable resource requests, the conversations talk about meticulously documenting every single one.
Right. Seems like a lot of detail.
What's the benefit of that level of detail?
Well, it creates transparency.
Okay.
A clear audit trail. You know what was requested, when, why, helps to prevent duplicate requests. Makes resource allocation so much easier.
I see.
And it minimizes those disputes or misunderstandings later on.
Because everything's documented.
Exactly. Plus, you get valuable data for future projects.
You can anticipate those resource needs more accurately.
Think of it like keeping a detailed inventory.
You know exactly what you have, what's been used.
And what you need.
And then there's this idea of a contingency fund.
Ah, yes. For when things go wrong.
Inevitably. How do you figure out the right size for a fund like that?
There's no magic formula.
Sure.
But a common approach is allocating a percentage of your total project budget, usually between 5% and 15%.
As a safety net.
Exactly. The exact amount depends on the project, how complex it is, how much uncertainty there is, and your organization's risk tolerance.
So how comfortable are you with things going a little sideways?
Precisely. It's also wise to think about potential risks early on.
Okay.
Try to estimate the financial impact if those risks actually happen.
That helps you decide how big that contingency fund needs to be.
Exactly. But remember, this fund is for those truly unexpected things.
Not for when you just didn't plan properly in the first place.
Or for when the scope of the project keeps expanding.
Right. Scope creep, that's a whole other issue.
Exactly.
Now, sometimes you need to bring in specialists.
Right.
These conversations mention things like regulatory compliance. How do you make sure you're getting the right expertise without overspending?
First, you need to be clear about what you actually need.
Okay.
What kind of expertise? What's the scope of work?
Got it.
Then, get quotes from several consultants or firms.
Shop around.
Exactly. Don't just look at the price tag.
Right.
Look at their experience, their track record. Ask for case studies, references.
So you can see what they've actually done.
Exactly. Remember, cost-effective doesn't always mean cheapest.
It means getting the best value.
Right. Getting it right the first time can save you a lot of headaches and money down the road.
And finally, the conversations always seem to end with this sense of urgency.
Yeah, you've got to get things moving.
Finalizing all the detail.
Implementation. Don't let it sit on a shelf gathering dust.
How do you keep that momentum going? See the project through to completion.
Clear communication is key. Everyone needs to know the plan.
Right.
Their responsibilities. The go-live date.
Got it.
And you need to monitor progress closely.
Make sure things are on track.
Exactly. Celebrate milestones.
Keep morale high.
Exactly. And have a clear process for dealing with those last-minute issues that always seem to pop up.
It's about staying focused.
Keeping your eye on the finish line.
Working together to get there. Now, let's shift gears a bit.
Okay.
From managing projects to venturing into new territory.
Emerging markets.
Right. And the conversations start with evaluating whether it even makes sense to enter a market. Looking at things like consumer demand. What are some reliable indicators of strong demand in a new market?
Well, you want to look at population growth.
Okay.
Disposable income.
How much money people have to spend.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Consumer spending patterns.
What are people buying?
Right. And unmet needs. Are there gaps in the market that you could fill?
So where can you find this information?
Market research reports.
Okay.
Industry analyses. You can even look at social media trends.
To see what people are talking about, what they're interested in.
Precisely. A rising middle class is often a good sign.
Okay.
As is increasing access to technology.
People have the means and the desire to buy new products and services.
Exactly.
But it's not just about the numbers, is it?
Not at all. You can't just crunch numbers and expect to succeed.
Right. The conversations emphasize this need for really comprehensive market research. Analyzing those cultural nuances,
Right.
understanding the competitive landscape.
Essential.
What are some of those cultural factors that businesses need to be aware of?
Well, cultural nuances can impact everything.
Give me some examples.
Product design,
Okay.
marketing messages, even things like communication styles and business etiquette.
So how you interact with people.
Exactly. You need to understand local customs, values, beliefs, social norms.
So you don't make any cultural faux pas.
Precisely. You want to build trust with consumers.
And with your local partners.
Of course. Things like language barriers, religious practices, social hierarchies.
Those can all be significant factors.
They can make or break your success in a new market.
So thorough research is essential.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And it can be really valuable to engage local cultural advisors.
People who understand the nuances of the market.
Precisely.
Now, once you understand the market, you need to adapt your product.
Right. Localize your offerings.
To boost acceptance.
Drive revenue. It makes perfect sense.
Can you give me some examples of successful product localization?
Sure. Think about McDonald's.
Okay.
They adapt their menu in different countries
Right?
to include local favorites.
Ooh.
Or Coca-Cola.
Okay.
They tailor their advertising campaigns to resonate with specific cultural values.
So it's not just about translating your product description.
Not at all. You might need to adapt the product features, the packaging, the branding, even the way you deliver a service.
So it aligns with what people expect, what they're used to.
Exactly. For example, a product designed for one person in one market might need to be offered in bigger sizes,
Okay.
family-size portions, in another market where people tend to share more.
That's fascinating. And language is a big part of that localization, isn't it?
Huge.
The conversations talk about multilingual marketing campaigns. To resonate with those local audiences, what are some best practices for developing those campaigns?
Again, it goes beyond just translation.
Right.
You need to consider the cultural context.
Okay.
Use expressions that make sense to the local audience.
Got it.
Get the tone and style right.
And how do you make sure you're getting it right?
Work with native speakers, people who understand the language and the culture.
They can help you avoid those subtle mistakes that could offend people.
Exactly. You might also need to adapt your visuals,
Okay.
the overall message, to make sure it's appropriate for the local market.
Now, you've got your product adapted, you've got your marketing message.
Yeah.
You need to get those products into the market.
Logistics. That's the next challenge.
Right. And these conversations really highlight the importance of partnering with local distributors. To make those supply chains work, what are the key benefits of working with those local partners?
Local distributors have the connections.
Okay.
They understand the local infrastructure. They already have relationships with retailers.
They know the lay of the land.
Exactly. They can navigate local regulations,
Right.
customs procedures, transportation challenges.
Much better than a foreign company trying to figure it all out on their own.
Precisely. Partnering with a local distributor can get your product to market much faster.
And make sure it actually reaches those consumers.
Exactly.
But of course, you need to negotiate those partnerships carefully.
Absolutely. Making sure you get favorable terms.
Hmm.
So you can get your product out there quickly. What are some key points to focus on in those negotiations?
Well, you need to be clear about everyone's responsibilities,
Okay.
set realistic sales targets,
Right.
distribution timelines, and establish some clear ways to measure performance.
So you can track how things are going.
Exactly. You also need to negotiate those payment terms,
Right.
exclusivity agreements,
Okay.
and exit strategies.
Just in case things don't work out,
Exactly. It's about building a win-win
where both parties benefit
and are motivated to make sure the product is available to those consumers.
throughout the market.
Now, getting the product there is one thing,
Right. But you got to do it profitably.
and these conversations really emphasize the importance of analyzing those logistic costs to make sure you're making money.
Without sacrificing those delivery timelines.
Exactly.
Yeah.
What are some of those hidden costs that businesses need to watch out for?
There are a lot of them. Warehousing fees,
Okay.
customs duties, brokerage charges,
Right.
transportation insurance,
Got it.
the cost of handling returns, and don't forget about delays.
Right. Those can lead to penalties.
Exactly. Or lost sales.
So you need to have a really detailed breakdown of those costs
Absolutely. To identify those hidden expenses.
and find ways to optimize.
Right. Maybe negotiate better rates with logistics providers,
Okay.
consolidate shipments.
To get those economies of scale.
Precisely.
Now, the conversations also talk about creating a cost breakdown
Mm-hmm.
to highlight areas where you can optimize.
Where you can save money.
Right. Where are some of those areas?
Oh, you can look at your packaging.
Okay.
Can you make it lighter, smaller?
To reduce shipping costs.
Exactly. You can explore different modes of transportation.
Sea, air, land.
Right. Each one has its own cost and speed.
So you need to choose the right one for each situation.
Precisely. You can also think about strategically locating your warehouses
Oh.
to minimize those transportation distances.
So the product doesn't have to travel as far.
Exactly. And technology can play a big role here.
How so?
Well, things like inventory management systems,
Okay.
route optimization software.
To make your deliveries more efficient?
Precisely. All of these can lead to significant cost savings.
Now, emerging markets can be unpredictable.
Volatility is the name of the game.
Right. And the conversations talk about things like tariff fluctuations, currency volatility.
Right. Those can really throw a wrench in your plans.
The suggestion is to implement hedging measures.
To protect yourself.
Can you explain what those are in simple terms?
Sure. Hedging is basically using financial instruments.
Okay.
Things like forward contracts, options,
Okay.
to lock in exchange rates
Okay.
or commodity prices.
At a future date.
Right. So you know what you're going to be paying.
Even if the market goes crazy.
Exactly. It's like insurance.
Against those financial losses.
Precisely.
And for that kind of risk management.
Yeah.
The conversations recommend working with financial advisors.
Experts who can guide you.
Right. What should you look for in an advisor like that?
Experience.
Okay.
Specifically in international finance and in the emerging markets you're targeting.
So they understand the specific challenges.
Precisely. They should know about currency hedging. Right.
International tax regulations.
Okay.
Risk management strategies.
To help you navigate those complex financial waters.
Exactly.
The conversations also mention exploring regional trade agreements to take advantage of things like preferential tariffs.
And save you a lot of money.
Right. How can businesses find and use these agreements?
Well, you need to do your research.
Okay.
See what agreements exist between your country and your target markets.
Got it.
Understand what those agreements mean for your products.
Okay.
Are there tariff reductions? Eliminations? You might need to get certificates of origin.
Okay.
Meet other requirements. It can be complex.
So it might be a good idea to consult with experts.
Definitely. Trade lawyers. Customs brokers, they can help you navigate the process.
Now, with all this information gathered, you need a plan.
A roadmap.
Right. The conversation suggests drafting an expansion roadmap to guide your efforts. What are the key elements of a roadmap like that? It should clearly define your target markets,
Okay.
why you've chosen those markets,
Got it.
your entry strategy,
Okay.
how you're going to get your product into the market, your distribution channels, your partners, your localized marketing tactics.
Your messaging, your media, your budget.
Right.
And it should include timelines,
Of course.
milestones,
Yeah.
the teams responsible for each part of the plan.
It's a living document.
Meaning,
You need to review it regularly,
okay,
update it as you learn more.
and as you make progress.
Exactly.
Now, to reach those local audiences, the conversations talk about engaging influencers to build credibility,
Right.
raise awareness.
Influencers can be very effective.
But how do you find the right ones in a new market?
Well, you want to find influencers whose audience aligns with yours.
Okay.
Same demographics, interests, values. You can analyze their engagement metrics.
Likes, comments, shares.
Right. To see how much reach they really have.
How much influence?
Exactly. And you want to look at their past collaborations. Make sure they align with your brand values.
Got it. Local expertise is really important here.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
You might want to work with a local influencer marketing agency.
They understand the market.
Precisely.
Now, to boost that reach even further, the conversation suggests allocating a specific budget for social media advertising. Targeted campaigns in those local markets. What are some things? You've brought us a whole collection of business English learning conversations. Really fascinating stuff. And our mission today is to, well, extract the strategic gold, right?
Absolutely, yeah.
You know, get past the grammar lessons and into the real nitty-gritty of how business works. And the range is impressive. I mean, we've got everything here. Project management, breaking into those emerging markets, sustainability, the whole bit about forecasting revenue, those digital tools we can't seem to live without these days. Leadership styles, crisis planning, always got to be ready for the unexpected, right?
Right.
Product innovation, keeping those supply chains running smooth, HR policies, the whole people side of things, conflict resolution. How do you build those powerful partnerships? How do we protect our brand's reputation?
Yeah.
And upskilling, making sure our teams are ready for whatever's next.
It's a lot. It is. Yeah. It covers a lot of ground.
Where should we even begin? With such a broad range of topics, what do you think is the real core foundation here?
Well, one thing that jumps out is how interconnected all these areas are. But if we're talking about a foundation, let's say project management.
Project management.
Often that sets the stage, doesn't it?
Yeah.
For success or, failure across the board.
Absolutely. And your conversations really highlight that the need for a cohesive approach.
Right.
To get projects off the ground and running.
Right.
And this idea of expediting those project timelines, it's not just about speed for speed's sake, though. Why is that speed so important? What's the real benefit?
Well, I think it's about maintaining momentum, showing value early on. That's what builds confidence. It builds confidence with your stakeholders.
Okay.
And these conversations, they talk about integrating agile methodologies, and a big part of agile is iterative development, right? Those short cycles of work, regular feedback loops, it allows for quicker wins and course correction along the way, almost like navigating with the GPS that's updating in real time rather than relying on a static map. And I think that responsiveness, it not only boosts productivity, but it keeps stakeholders engaged.
Right. Makes them feel like they're part of it.
Exactly. And confident that the project is on track and meeting their needs that are always evolving, of course.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. And it sounds like breaking down those internal silos is just as crucial. You mentioned stakeholders, but internally there's this big emphasis on harnessing that cross-department collaboration.
Right.
Not just as a nice to have, but as like a must-have to spot those potential problems early on and be transparent. How can you foster that kind of collaboration? Like, what are some practical ways?
One suggestion that comes up in your conversations is establishing a concise framework, right?
Framework.
For team coordination. And this doesn't need to be a rigid hierarchy. It's more about clearly defined roles, responsibilities, communication channels. Think of it like a well-organized orchestra. Everyone knows their part. Everyone knows when to play, guided by a clear score. And regular cross-functional meetings, shared digital workspaces, maybe having clearly defined escalation paths. These can all contribute to this framework, ensuring that information flows freely. And then those potential roadblocks, well, they're identified and addressed collectively, right?
Yeah.
By the team.
Right. Makes sense. Now, even with the best laid plans, you need resources, right?
Absolutely.
And these discussions really highlight allocating those resources effectively and also revising the budget allocation periodically to prevent those scary fiscal shortfalls. So how often should we be looking at the budget in a project?
Well, a periodic review, as your conversation suggests, is absolutely key. And the frequency really depends on the project, right? On its length, complexity. But generally, a monthly review allows for adjustments and timely adjustments. And it's not just about reacting, right? It's about being proactive.
Right.
Are there any phases that might need more resources than we thought? Are there opportunities to reallocate from areas that are progressing faster? Maybe need less than expected? And this proactive approach, well, it ensures that resources are deployed effectively throughout the life cycle of the project, right? Minimizing that risk of running out of steam or budget as we get closer to the finish line.
Yeah, and that proactive thinking,
Yeah.
it goes beyond our internal teams, doesn't it?
Right.
Because we're also dealing with those external partners, and these conversations highlight maintaining those contractual obligations. So how do you keep those external relationships strong and avoid those misunderstandings that can just snowball sometimes?
Well, communication.
Communication.
Clear, consistent communication. That's paramount.
Yeah.
Your conversations suggest a comprehensive briefing memo outlining key milestones, dependencies from the very start.
From the start, yeah.
Setting those expectations, the ground rules, if you will. Regular updates, transparent reporting, and proactive engagement addressing their concerns, their queries, right? This can build trust and ensure that everyone is truly on the same page, regarding their responsibilities and what they're delivering.
Yeah. And it seems like regular check-ins are a big part of that. The conversations mention formalizing these check-ins, especially those weekly virtual meetings. So in a world of, constant emails and Slack messages and everything else, Why are those face-to-face interactions, even if they're virtual, why are they so important?
I think it's the human element, right? Emails are great for transmitting information, but those regular check-ins, those virtual meetings, they provide a space for dialogue,
Yeah.
for clarification, and honestly, for building rapport. You can pick up on nonverbal cues, address those emerging issues in real time, foster a sense of shared purpose. And one speaker in your conversations, they put it really well. They said, constant communication fosters trust.
Yeah, trust is huge.
In these meetings, they provide that vital human connection, right, that can prevent, those small misunderstandings from turning into big problems down the line.
Absolutely. And in today's world, it's no surprise that technology comes up a lot. We see the potential of a streamlined workflow platform for those immediate status updates.
Yeah.
And, cutting down on that email overload that we all experience. So what are some key features to look for in a platform like that?
Well, I think you want real-time visibility into task progress, seamless file sharing, collaboration tools, and automated notifications, for deadlines, dependencies,
Right.
and integration with the other tools your team uses, your calendar apps, communication platforms. It all needs to work together. The goal is to have that central hub, right, for all project-related information activity. You don't want to be hunting through endless email threads.
No.
And this way, everyone has a clear, up-to-date picture of the project status.
Yeah, and taking that a step further, we also see this idea of an integrated dashboard as a way to centralize data. So what kind of data should be on a dashboard like that?
I think the key is to display those metrics that give you a high-level overview of project health, performance. This might include progress against milestones, budget burn rate, resource allocation, identified risks, the status of those risks, and any KPIs that are specific to that project's goals. And the dashboard itself, it needs to be customizable, so that different stakeholders can view the information that's most relevant to them. This enables that quick identification of issues and ultimately data-driven decision-making.
Right. And with all this digital information flowing around, security is, well, a huge concern.
Of course.
And, these conversations emphasize evaluating and strengthening those security protocols. Encryption, access control, it all got to be there. What are some fundamental security measures that every project should have in place?
Well, at a minimum, any project dealing with sensitive information has to employ strong encryption, both in transit and at rest. Robust access controls, limiting who can view, who can edit specific data, and regular security audits are essential.
Right.
Those help identify vulnerabilities. And then employee training, we can't forget about that. Training them on best practices for data security. And having clear protocols for reporting and responding to security incidents, it's like locking your doors and having a security system.
Yeah.
Exactly. You're layering defenses to protect valuable assets.
Absolutely. And then bringing it all together, these conversations talk about finalizing those timelines, ensuring adequate testing before launch. So what are some common pitfalls to avoid during that testing phase?
Well, one common one is just not having sufficient test coverage.
Yeah.
Not testing all the critical functionalities, not running through all the potential user scenarios. Another pitfall is rushing, right?
Yeah, because of deadlines.
Exactly. Schedule pressures can lead to us releasing buggy products or features.
Yeah, nobody wants that.
No, definitely not. And it's also important to get stakeholders involved in that user acceptance testing, right?
Okay.
To ensure the final deliverable meets their expectations.
Makes sense.
And thorough documentation of test cases, the results, that's crucial for identifying and fixing issues effectively.
Right, so you can track back and see, okay, where did this go wrong?
Exactly. Think of testing as the final quality check. It's better to catch those problems now than to have your users discover them later.
Oh, yeah, definitely. And even with meticulous planning, things can still hit a snag, right? So these conversations highlight the importance of that stakeholder review.
Right.
Of updated schedules and valuing their insights, especially when it comes to those potential obstacles like conflicts over resources, overlapping priorities. How can you effectively get that feedback and actually use it?
Well, I think you have to be proactive. Don't just present the updated schedule. Create a forum, for open discussion.
Okay, yeah.
It could be dedicated meetings or maybe a shared online platform where they can provide comments, raise concerns. You need to explain the rationale behind any schedule changes.
Yeah.
And show that you've considered their feedback.
Sure you listened.
Exactly. It's about fostering that collaborative approach where stakeholders feel valued, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that their input actually contributes to a more robust, more realistic project plan.
To keep track of all those resource requests, one thing that's mentioned is documenting every single one
Right.
to foster synergy and minimize those budget overruns. Is it really necessary to track everything in that much detail? What's the value there?
Well, I think it provides transparency.
Good.
You have that clear audit trail, right? What was requested, when, and why. This can help prevent duplicate requests,
Right.
It leads to better allocation decisions and minimizes potential disputes.
Yeah, because it's all there in black and white.
Exactly. And it also provides valuable data, right? Data for future planning, helping you anticipate resource needs more accurately. It's like keeping a detailed inventory.
Yeah, so you know what you've got.
You know what you have, what's been used, what you'll need in the future.
Makes sense. And just in case, because sometimes the unexpected happens, these conversations talk about a contingency fund.
Right.
So how do you determine the right size for a fund like that?
Well, there's no one-size-fits-all answer, but a common approach is to allocate a percentage of the total project budget.
Yep.
Often somewhere between 5 and 15%.
As a contingency.
Exactly, as a contingency. And the exact amount, well, it depends on the project, right? The complexity, the level of uncertainty, your organization's risk tolerance.
Right.
It's also smart to identify those potential risks early on.
Yeah, those what ifs.
Exactly, those what ifs. And estimate the potential impact of each that can help inform the size of your contingency fund. And this fund, it should be for truly unforeseen events, right?
Yeah.
Not for scope creep or, poor planning up front.
Right. And sometimes you need specialized expertise, right?
Yeah.
When you're dealing with things like regulatory compliance, these conversations mention the need for those specialized consultants. So how do you ensure you're getting the right expert without breaking the bank?
Well, you start by clearly defining what you need, what specific expertise,
Okay.
and the scope of work. Then you gather preliminary quotations from multiple consultants, multiple firms, and you focus not just on cost, but also on their experience.
Yeah, their track record.
Their track record. And don't be afraid to ask for case studies, references. Cost effectiveness doesn't always mean the cheapest option, right? It means getting the best value for your investment.
Yeah.
You want to ensure compliance and avoid those potentially costly penalties down the line.
Absolutely. And then finally, there's that push to action, right?
Right.
Finalizing the details, proceeding with implementation. What's the key to maintaining momentum and seeing a project through to completion?
Well, I think communication is key again. Right?
Communication, okay.
Clearly communicating the finalized plan, everyone's responsibilities, that go-live date,
Right.
maintaining regular progress monitoring, celebrating milestones to keep morale high, and having a clear process for addressing any issues that pop up.
Right.
Those last-minute issues. I think it's about keeping the finish line in sight and working towards it
Yeah.
collaboratively with focused effort.
Absolutely. So let's shift gears a little bit from managing projects to venturing into those new territories.
Okay, yeah.
Let's talk about emerging markets. And these conversations start by talking about evaluating those markets, looking at potential penetration, and looking for that strong consumer demand. So what are some reliable indicators of that demand?
Well, you want to look at data, right? Data on population growth, disposable income, consumer spending patterns,
Right.
and importantly, unmet needs within that market. Market research reports, industry analysis. You can even look at social media trends.
Yeah, what are people talking about?
Exactly. What are people talking about? What are they buying? What are they looking for? This can reveal where there's a genuine opportunity.
Okay.
And often, a rising middle class, increasing access to technology, these are strong indicators.
Yeah, makes sense. But understanding the market goes beyond just those numbers, right? Because you need to factor in cultural nuances, the competitive landscape, the conversations really emphasize that. What are some of those cultural factors that businesses really need to be aware of?
Well, cultural nuances, they impact everything. From your product design and your marketing message to communication styles and just basic business etiquette, understanding local customs, their values, beliefs, social norms, it's crucial.
Yeah.
Crucial to avoid missteps and build trust.
Avoid offending people.
Exactly. You don't want to offend anyone. Language barriers are obvious.
Right.
But also religious practices, social hierarchies, these can all influence business success. And sometimes it can be really valuable to engage local cultural advisors, people who can give you that insight.
Yeah, the people who live there, they know, right?
They know.
And that local understanding, it goes beyond just, understanding the people. It extends to the product itself, right? Because localizing product offerings can make a huge difference. Can you give us some examples of successful product localization?
Sure, think about McDonald's. They adapt their menu
Yeah.
to include locally popular items in different countries. Or Coca-Cola, tailoring their advertising campaigns to resonate with specific cultural values. This could be adapting product features, packaging, branding, even the way a service is delivered
Yeah.
to better align with local preferences. For example, a product designed for individual use in one market might need to be offered in family-sized portions in another, where communal consumption is the norm.
Yeah, that makes sense. And language is obviously a big part of that. The conversations highlight multilingual marketing campaigns, why they're so important.
Yeah.
What are some best practices for developing a campaign like that?
Well, it goes beyond just translation, right?
Yeah.
You have to consider the cultural context, use idiomatic expressions that resonate with the local audience, choose the appropriate tone and style. And working with native speakers is essential.
Yeah.
They understand those nuances. And you might need to adapt your visuals, your messaging, to align with local sensitivities.
Yeah, what's appropriate in one place might not be appropriate in another.
Now, getting your products into these new markets efficiently, that's another hurdle.
Right.
These conversations talk about partnerships with local distributors, how important that is. So what are the key benefits of working with a local distributor?
Well, they have the networks, right? The established networks.
Yeah.
They understand the local logistics. They have those relationships with retailers. They can navigate the local regulations, customs procedures, transportation challenges.
Right.
Much more effectively than a foreign company trying to do it all themselves. And this can speed up your time to market significantly.
Okay. Yeah.
And ensure your products reach consumers efficiently.
Makes sense. And then you've got to negotiate the terms, right?
Absolutely.
Make sure that product is available promptly, capitalize on that opportunity. So what are some key negotiation points to focus on?
Define responsibilities clearly. Set realistic sales targets.
Okay.
Distribution timelines. Establish clear performance metrics. You'll also want to negotiate payment terms, exclusivity agreements if you want those, and, importantly, your exit strategy. Yeah, how do you get out if you need to?
Exactly. It's all about building that mutually beneficial relationship. Both parties are incentivized to make sure the product is available, readily available.
Yeah, you're in it together. And, of course, getting the product there is only half the battle, right?
Right.
Because you have to do it profitably.
Right.
The conversations emphasize analyzing those logistic costs to make sure you're not, losing money.
Yeah, make sure it makes sense.
What are some common hidden costs that businesses might miss?
Well, there are warehousing fees, customs duties and brokerage charges, transportation insurance, return logistics, and, of course, potential delays.
Yeah.
Those can lead to penalties, lost sales. A detailed cost breakdown, like your conversation suggests, is essential.
So you see the whole picture.
You see the whole picture. You can identify those potential hidden costs and find areas to optimize. Maybe negotiate better rates with providers, consolidate shipments. Smart. And to really drill down into those costs, the conversation suggests compiling a detailed cost breakdown, highlighting those potential areas for optimization. Where can businesses typically find those cost savings in their international logistics?
Well, look at optimizing your packaging rate.
Okay.
Can you reduce weight and volume?
Mm-hmm.
Explore different transportation modes. Sea versus air versus land. Depends on your cost and speed requirements.
Yeah, what's the trade-off?
Exactly. What's the trade-off? Consolidate shipments to achieve economies of scale and strategically locate warehouses, right?
Yeah.
Minimize those transportation distances.
Yeah, get them closer to where they need to be.
Exactly. And technology. Don't forget about technology. Implementing technology for better inventory management, route optimization, that can lead to significant savings as well.
Right. And emerging markets, they can be unpredictable. So these conversations talk about potential tariff fluctuations, currency volatility, and how important it is to have those hedging measures in place.
Mm-hmm.
Can you explain what hedging measures are? What does that actually mean? Sure. Hedging involves using financial instruments.
Okay.
Things like forward contracts or options to lock in exchange rates, commodity prices at a future date.
So you're protecting yourself.
You're protecting yourself, exactly, from those unexpected fluctuations. It's like taking out insurance, right?
Yeah.
Against potential losses.
Okay, so you're minimizing your risk. And when it comes to risk management, these conversations recommend collaborating with financial advisors.
Absolutely. You need that expertise.
Yeah. So what specific expertise should you look for in an advisor?
Well, they need experience in international finance.
Okay, so not just any financial advisor.
Not just any financial advisor, specifically in the emerging markets that you're targeting. They should have expertise in currency hedging, international tax regulations, risk management strategies. They can help you navigate those complexities, and develop a solid financial strategy.
Okay, yeah, because it can be complex, especially with those different regulations in different countries.
Mm-hmm.
Now, another point that comes up is exploring regional trade agreements to see if you can benefit from, those preferential tariff structures. How do you even begin to identify those agreements, and how do you use them to your advantage?
Well, you have to do your research. Research the trade agreements that exist between your home country and those target markets.
Okay.
Understand what tariff reductions apply to your products specifically.
Okay.
You might need certificates of origin, meet other requirements
Right.
to qualify for those preferential rates. And again, consulting with trade lawyers, customs brokers, they can help you navigate that complexity.
Yeah, you don't want to get caught off guard.
Absolutely not.
Now, with all this research and planning, the conversations talk about an expansion roadmap.
Yeah.
And it needs to clearly indicate market prioritization and localized marketing tactics. What are some of the key elements that roadmap should include?
Well, first, it needs to define your target markets, right? And why you've prioritized them. It should outline your market entry strategy. How are you going to enter? What distribution channels? What partnerships? You need to detail your localized marketing tactics, your messaging, media channels, budget allocation. It should include key milestones, timelines, and who is responsible.
Right. Who's doing what?
Exactly. And this roadmap, it needs to be a living document, right?
Okay. Yeah. So you revisit it.
You revisit it, you update it as you get more information and progress in your expansion.
Makes sense. And then to reach those local audiences effectively, the conversations highlight engaging influencers.
Yeah, influencer marketing.
They can elevate your brand credibility, accelerate awareness. So how do you find the right influencers in a brand new market?
Well, you look for influencers whose audience aligns with your target market.
Okay, so their audience needs to match yours.
It needs to match yours in terms of demographics, interests, values. And then you analyze their engagement, their likes, comments, shares, to understand their reach. Research their past collaborations. You want to make sure they align with your brand values and that they have a good track record. And local market expertise is key here.
Yeah.
Maybe work with local influencer marketing agencies. They understand the landscape best.
They're in it.
They're in it.
To amplify that reach, you need a dedicated budget for social media advertising. And the conversations talk about targeted campaigns using data analytics. So how can data analytics help you get more out of those campaigns?
Well, data analytics lets you segment your customer base, right?
Okay.
Based on demographics, buying behavior, online activity, you name it. You can create those targeted messages that are much more likely to resonate, right? Leading to higher conversions and a more efficient use of your budget.
Because you're not wasting money on people who aren't interested.
Exactly.
Now, a segmented approach is particularly powerful for those niche products, right? The ones with those dedicated audiences. Recognizing that, one size doesn't fit all in marketing.
Right.
How do you identify and reach those niche audiences effectively?
Do your market research. Thorough market research. You want to identify those specific customer segments with unmet needs, unique preferences. Then, use your data analytics to understand their online behavior, what media they consume.
Okay, where are they?
Where are they? Leverage niche social media platforms, online communities, places where they congregate. And tailor your message, tailor your product to address their needs directly.
And then, of course, track everything. Right?
Track everything, absolutely.
To see what's working.
You've got to see what's working, what's not.
What are some of the key metrics to track when you're evaluating those revenue-generating strategies?
Well, you want to look at your sales growth rate, your customer acquisition cost, customer lifetime value, average order value, your conversion rates across all your marketing channels, and your customer churn rate.
All right, how many people are you losing?
Exactly. And regularly monitoring those metrics, it gives you that clear picture of your revenue performance and helps you pinpoint those areas that need improvement.
Now, looking beyond immediate sales, these conversations talk about anticipating those macroeconomic trends that could affect things in the short term, like rising interest rates.
Yeah.
It's about having that bigger economic picture in mind.
Right.
So how can businesses stay informed about those broader trends?
Well, you need to review economic forecasts. Get them from reputable sources. Follow the financial news.
Yeah.
And consider consulting, economists or financial analysts. You want to pay attention to government policies, regulations, anything that could impact your industry, right?
Right.
Understanding these trends, it helps you anticipate challenges, but also opportunities.
Right.
And then you can adjust your financial strategies accordingly.
And one way to plan for those what-if scenarios is to run those sensitivity analyses. Can you explain in simple terms what a sensitivity analysis is?
Sure. It basically involves examining how changes in key variables, things like interest rates, exchange rates, even raw material costs, how those changes would impact your financials,
Okay.
your revenue, your profitability.
Yep.
You run different scenarios.
Yeah, what if this happens?
What if this happens? And then you assess your vulnerability.
Okay.
You can develop contingency plans to mitigate those potential negative impacts.
Okay, so you're ready. Now, diversifying your product lines, that can help cushion those fluctuations.
Right, not putting all your eggs in one basket.
Exactly. What are some factors to consider when you're exploring product diversification?
Well, think about your core competencies.
Okay, what are you good at?
What are you good at? Can you leverage those in new areas, analyze the market demand, assess your competition, and evaluate those potential synergies?
Okay.
Synergies with your existing products, your customer base. It's important to do your research, thorough market research, and feasibility studies.
Yeah, before you jump in.
Before you jump in.
Now, identifying gaps in your existing portfolio, where expansion seems feasible, and then exploring partnerships that can really help reduce development costs.
Absolutely. And it can shorten that time to market.
Right.
It's a strategic way to grow and, mitigate risk.
Yeah, spread it out a bit. What are some of the advantages of partnering for product development?
Well, partnerships, they give you access, right? Access to complementary technologies, expertise, resources, and that allows you to develop faster and cheaper than doing it all in-house.
Right.
And they can help you reach new customers, expand your market presence.
And of course, when you're talking about partnerships, finding the right partner is key. These conversations mention approaching potential collaborators who have that complementary expertise, those resource sharing opportunities. So what are some key considerations when you're evaluating a potential partner?
Well, you have to look at their financial stability, their reputation in the industry. Do they align with your culture, your values? And are there those potential synergies? Synergies in terms of technology, market access, expertise. It's got to be a good fit.
Yeah, it's like a relationship, right?
It is. It really is. And you have to clearly define those roles, responsibilities, expectations, get it all down in a collaboration agreement.
And those alliances, they can boost your brand visibility too, right?
Yeah.
Because you're tapping into their audience as well. So it's a win-win.
It is. It is.
But you got to protect yourself, formalizing agreements, safeguarding intellectual property, revenue allocation, all of that's so important.
Yeah.
What are some key clauses that those agreements should include?
Well, you need to define ownership. Ownership of any newly developed intellectual property. Outline the licensing terms, the usage rights, and establish a transparent revenue sharing model.
Yeah, so everyone's clear on how the money flows.
Exactly. And you want to include clauses on confidentiality, dispute resolution, termination of the agreement. You're protecting both parties' interests.
Yeah, those what-ifs. And that's where legal counsel comes in, right?
Yeah.
Drafting those contracts before you announce anything.
Absolutely. Protect your assets.
And finalize those negotiations quickly so you can, strike while the iron's hot.
You've got to capitalize on that market momentum.
A delayed launch could cost you, right?
Absolutely. It could jeopardize your advantage.
So establish a timeline, make sure those milestones are met, keep things moving.
Keep it moving.
And of course, you need to be vigilant, right?
Yeah.
Adjust your forecasts as you get new data because things are always changing.
Always changing.
And producing monthly updates for your executives. Keep them in the loop.
Keep them informed.
So they understand those evolving economic conditions.
Yeah.
And then finalize your reports.
Yeah.
Make sure they're accurate, timely. That's what drives those strategic decisions. And of course, coordinate input from all the different departments.
Get everyone's perspective.
Exactly. So you have a comprehensive picture of your financial outlook.
Yeah.
Okay, let's talk about technology. These conversations really emphasize adopting those cutting-edge digital tools. How can they revolutionize internal processes?
It's about working smarter, not harder.
Right. And one of the foundational steps seems to be implementing those cloud-based systems. So how does cloud technology actually streamline data access and collaboration?
Well, The cloud stores data and applications on those remote servers, right?
Okay, yeah.
So employees can access them from anywhere
As long as they have internet.
as long as they have internet. And you eliminate the need for all that on-premises hardware or software.
Right, less IT overhead.
Less overhead, less complexity, and it really facilitates real-time collaboration, on documents, projects, regardless of location, and that improves productivity.